What's up? It's Adrian from Two Black Guys, and you are watching Manifesto TV.
Two Black Guys has been worn by the likes of our own Drake, Mary J. Everybody remembers the Mary J. I remember that was huge, and I know like amazing people have worn it, but the Mary J. that was just so big because at the time, just everything that was happening, that was. I don't know. I think so many of us were so proud on many different levels, but Mary, Mos Def, Ice Cube, Spike Lee. I just really want to talk about the vibe of what it felt like, and especially at that time, because that's pre-internet, that's everything, all the luxuries that we have now. Like, I'm sure if anybody, like if I fell off the chair, everybody snaps and it's, the world knows about it right away. Right. But it's like, at those times, it was more of a monocultural type of thing. It was more event-based, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody knew, oh, Mary J was going to be on The Box or on MTV or whatever. So everybody watched, and then, you know, you would see whomever with what they were wearing. Everything kind of meant a lot more because people had to work a lot harder to attain certain brands. People had to work hard to make sure a show was like this. Everything, like, there was just a lot more that went into it because those moments were so important. What was it like? Describe the feeling for you and the crew when you saw some of these people, and this is before you got to meet them, but what was it like when you saw these people wearing your things, or when you heard that such and such wore, you know what I'm saying, wore the joints?
Well, you touched on a key point, which is that we would hear. So we heard that Ice Cube's wearing something. We heard that Ice-T wore something here. We heard, like, so you wouldn't see it. You just hear it. And then I remember every month we look in the source, and we'd see in the source who was wearing what and when, because that's the only way we would actually really know.
The source was a magazine. We used to flip through the pages.
Wait, yeah.
And that's how we were updated with what was going on. In hip hop.
Yeah, once a month. Yeah, you have to explain what a magazine is. Yeah, a magazine is. Yeah. So the Mary J.
Let's see what happens next month. Sorry. So.
yeah, next month I'll see. Yeah. So the Mary J. thing, I think, and you know, I told the story a million times, but like I wish I could say that I was a mastermind that created that you know, came up with this elaborate plot, and we'd actually engineered that, and it just happened. It really sort of happened without us even knowing about it until it actually had happened. So her stylist bought the jersey from a store that was selling our stuff in New York, and then the store called and said, oh yeah, the stylist bought your shirt, but we get those calls like every other week. The stylist bought your stuff, and then, oh, great, okay, whatever. And then so when we actually, someone said, oh, we just saw the video, and your stuff's all up in it. We're like, okay, cool. But we didn't really know what it looked like or meant or felt like, whatever. But the big part about that was that it said Toronto on it. Mm-hmm. So back in the day before the internet, people would actually, clap for that.
Clap for
that, sure.
Some like anarchists back there?
Yeah,
before the internet, yes!
Yes, that's right. I'm here for that. So back in the
dark ages,
the enlightened era,
right?
People would actually have to phone directory, like 411 of whatever area code you were looking for, to find like a store phone number,
right?
Because we didn't have there was no email, or like that was it. Like you wanted to get through to us, you were calling us on the phone, which we intentionally had like a dial rotary phone just on purpose, because we were like, you know, like that guy in the back.
Yeah.
So. When that happened, people could say, "Oh, it's from Toronto,"
right?
Because I think people had heard about it, and you know, we'd started to get people coming up into you know, to our store, like, you know, particularly around Carabana, like was a really big time. We used to call it Second Christmas, because you know, we get so many American customers coming in because they were here, and they're like, "Oh, I've been hearing about this brand, but I can't get it, you know, in Cleveland or in, you know, Chicago or wherever it is that they were coming from." But now people knew where it was.
What was it like to get that spot? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, how many people actually got to go to that spot way back in the day?
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out.
What was it like initially getting that spot? The Toronto spot.
Yeah,
We'll
it was. I mean, it was easy, no resistance. Our first store, which was sort of it was in the basement of a Third World bookstore, and Third World bookstore was like, yeah, you clap for that. Because Third World bookstore was like a pillar of the community. Like people met there, people bought books there, they got informed there. There were like study groups and stuff that happened. Like it was, like a cultural lightning rod. Like everybody got together there. So we convinced them, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, to let us have the basement of their bookstore. You clap for that too. R.I.P.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson.
Yeah, R.I.P. To let us use the basement of their store, in the evenings and Saturday up until 12, because the study group was there on Saturday. So we would, basically set up, and their basement was like everyone else's basement, like it had a bunch of stuff in it. So they wouldn't let us move anything out. So what we did is we covered everything with black tarp, and then we had like this really thin line of lights so that you didn't really see anything until you got to this little sectioned off part that we had where we actually hung stuff on a grid, like metal grid, really. And
what were some of the craziest people like during your time there? What were some of the most, I guess, the biggest personalities that came through?
Well, Ice Cube, I think, was the tipping point for us when we were still in the basement. To see Ice Cube come through with the lynch mob, like coming down these stairs, and it's like it sounded like a herd of elephants was coming down the stairs because there was like so many of them, and it's Ice Cube, and to have him make that sort of journey, going through a bookstore, down the stairs, through this long, dark sort of corridor where you don't know what's happening in the city you're not familiar with, and going to this metal box, we're like, wow, this is pretty impressive that someone at his level or caliber would actually come to
go to those lengths
to an environment like this.
Yeah.
But then we moved quickly from there to our own sort of store, which was just basically around the corner, and it was a space that no one had been able to make successful for the landlord, and we were there for about 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah. But keeping in mind, I mean, it was at a time when it was cool to not be in the way of everybody. We wanted to be on the beaten path. We wanted to be off the beaten path. So we could have chosen a location that was more mainstream to get a lot of traffic, but we deliberately wanted to be out of the spotlight because, first of all, we didn't want to have to entertain a bunch of people just wandering in off the street saying, "Oh, what do we have in here? Ooh, 2 black guys. What is this all about?" Yeah. So, which is what you get now online, right? So we just wanted to avoid all of that because I'd really rather not talk to anyone than talk to everyone.
I feel the same.
Half the time. So we chose a location where people would have to actually find us. And we figured that when they found us, it was because they wanted to find us, and when they got there, it's probably because they wanted to, they wanted to be about what we were about. So that location was ideal for us for those reasons. And when we decided to open in New York, we chose a location that was the same. So again, it was off the beaten path. It wasn't like in the way of anybody. You had to, go out of your way to find it. And it got to the point where tour buses from visiting countries, particularly Japan, would actually stop by our store in New York as like one of the hip hop tours, whatever.
Right.
So like you get these Japanese customers coming.
And there, if you look to your left.
Yeah, exactly. The indigenous people of Lower East Side. Yeah. So
can we touch a little bit on, because I remember I don't remember why I was in New York, but I remember I got there. I was there at a time and the store had been robbed like the week before.
That one.
Yeah. What was the New York vibe and the New York reception like to 2 black guys?
Because we had 2 stores in New York. In Lower East Side, which wasn't the Lower East Side that it is now for people who are familiar with New York, it was a developing neighborhood when we were there, and it was full of people who were like sort of local, very local, and then there was a lot of people who dealt heroin, and like, so people would, so there's that kind of traffic, and then there was like a hip hop spot right beside us called 555 Soul. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that brand. Clap for that too.
They were okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
They were all right.
Yeah, she'd been around for a little while. So we opened up beside her, and so we were creating this little vibe in that neighborhood, and it was really, really cool. We were there for a year, and then we said, you know what, we need to move somewhere maybe with a little more volume. That block was getting a little hot, and so we decided to move to Brooklyn, which was right beside, which actually was
Safer.
in Spike, we thought. It was in Spike Lee's building.
Oh, okay.
So he was like our landlord.
Nice.
And it was in a nice part of Brooklyn, Fort Greene, where it was like, Wesley Snipes had a brownstone, Spike had his brownstone, we were renting a little spot, and, Diggle plants lived on the block, and it was a really cool
What the hell was Spike Lee like as a landlord?
As a landlord?
Yeah.
He was an absentee landlord. He was busy. He was making movies. But he got his rent every month.
Well, somebody has to pay for those Knicks tickets.
Somebody has to pay for them Knicks tickets. So when we were in Lower East Side, we were part of a community there. When we were in Brooklyn, we weren't. Mm-hmm. So when we were in Lower East Side, we didn't get robbed. When we were in Brooklyn, we did. So when we got robbed once, a couple of times, and really we had a store that was as big as a stage. And, we couldn't have three people working in a store that small. Right. So what they would do is, 4 or 5 people would come in with our one employee. One person occupies the employee, and the other people clean up the store. Right. Which was okay, whatever. I mean,
that's now known as the Scarborough.
Is that the Scarborough?
The Scarborough.
Scarborough shopping.
That's what you do.
Yeah. So we were good with that up until the point where the store two doors down from us got robbed at gunpoint. We're like, okay, I'm not really down with putting people's lives at risk for for what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So we decided, okay, let's go home. We went back. We came back to Toronto, where it's safer, even in Scarborough.